Let's talk about Syracuse football's 2025 offensive line.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in a Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, on today's show, Fran Brown got one, but two awards today. So we'll go over both of them here on today's show, but that's coming up later. We're also going to discuss whether or not Syracuse football will add to its offensive line in the transfer portal. Spoiler alert, I think they will add on at least one more player. It just depends on whether it's going to be a starter or if it's going to be a depth option. But first, we are going to go over some unfortunate news, and that is that Syracuse football missed out on one of their transfer portal targets on the offensive line, and that is Rahtrel Perry from Central Connecticut, and we'll also go over where the unit sits right now at this current time. So, Rahtrel Perry, I think he would have been Syracuse football's best addition in the transfer portal. While he's coming from Central Connecticut, which is FCS, I get it, I understand, but look, 24/7 Sports had him as a borderline top 100 overall player in the transfer portal. Can you believe that? Borderline top 100 for someone coming from Central Connecticut. But he was really good, and he had a lot of Power 4 offers. Syracuse was interested in him. Ultimately, he decided to transfer to Maryland, okay? So let's go over where the offensive line sits right now after missing out on Rahtrel Perry, right? Because Syracuse football, they got to dust it off, and they got to just move on and continue with what they either have or potentially add in the portal. They do have one addition that they have made. And we talked about him in a mini podcast, so you can check that out. I'll link that podcast in the description below here. But Syracuse football added Naquill Betrand, an Alabama offensive tackle who I think is going to start. I think he's got tremendous upside. I believe he was a former 4-star recruit, if I remember correctly. He was pretty recent, but he went to Alabama and he never saw the field at Alabama. There's no shame in that, right? It's Alabama. They get a ton of great recruits, so it's hard to beat out all those guys. That's why you come to Syracuse, hopefully, and have an opportunity to play. And who knows? He can maybe be really good. We saw that from Jackson Meeks, who barely got on the field at Georgia and then just became a second-team All-ACC wide receiver, right? It can be done. So Naquill Betrand has got some high upside. I think he's going to be a starter. He is the one addition that the Orange have made so far in the portal on their offensive line. As far as who they have lost out on for sure, and by that I mean the starters from last year's unit who are definitely gone. They cannot come back. The first one is tackle Savion Washington. He was the Colorado transfer they brought in from last season. He's out of eligibility, and he's now in the NFL draft. We wish him nothing but the best. We hope he goes as high as humanly possible in the NFL draft. Savion Washington, a very, very good tackle for Syracuse this past season. And also center John Ray Reed, who gained an extra year of eligibility thanks to the Diego Pavia ruling, right? More on that in a moment. He got that extra year of eligibility, announced that he was coming back to college. I was hoping that he was going to return to Syracuse. Maybe you felt differently because it's not like he graded out the best on Pro Football Focus. I believe he was the 14th rated center in the ACC this past year, but still, camaraderie. He's been with the program, the starting center for the past 2 years. He had an extra year of eligibility. I myself would have wanted him back. That's my thought on it. But he decided to transfer to USC, and I wish him nothing but the best. So as it stands right now with Syracuse's 2025 offensive line, I think David Woolaba will be the starting left tackle. As of right now, as of this recording, it's January 15th at 3:55 p.m. Eastern, so something could change between now and late August. But I think David Woolaba is the favorite to be the left tackle for the Orange next season. He will be a redshirt senior. Then you have both guard spots open. More on that in a second. The center spot is open as well. I do think that there will be a competition for that, and we can go over that in the next segment as to whether or not they're going to add to their offensive line. But I do think with the center spot, they're going to stay in-house on that. And then he got the other tackle spot, right tackle. The favorite to start in my mind is Naquill Betrand from Alabama, who we just went over. But there's also Demetrius Witherspoon, who started games for the Orange this past season at tackle. But as it stands, it's pretty clear there are open spots on Syracuse football's offensive line, whether they decide to stay in-house and promote from within or decide to go in the portal. There are open spots, but there is one thing that Syracuse needs to figure out with its offensive line. There's one big priority for the Orange, and it's two players. It is the starting guards from last year, Jakob Bradford and Mark Petry. Now, why do I reference that Diego Pavia ruling seemingly every week here on this podcast? It's because it's important and it does impact Syracuse. The reason why it's important is because Diego Pavia, who started his career in JUCO, the court gave him an extra year of eligibility due to NIL reasons. And so the NCAA, to avoid a whole slew of lawsuits, decided to give every JUCO player who was out of eligibility for this season an extra year. So now they have 2025 to play, and that's that. The reason why that's important is because when I had on 24/7 Sports Syracuse insider Mike McAllister on the podcast on Thursday evening, you can go and check that out as well when you're done with this podcast, he mentioned that, hey, Syracuse football, Mark Petry, Jakob Bradford, he believes that both do have another year of eligibility if they decide to use it. There's no guarantee that they're going to use it, but they do have that luxury in his mind that they could come back. Now, we have heard some good news on that front with Mark Petry. Mark Petry put out a pretty cryptic Instagram post less than a week ago, it was specifically 5 days ago, and he hinted at a possible return on his Instagram. He put out a post with him playing for Syracuse, and he had his caption read, quote, "Another year to get rid of the accent." Now, for those that don't know about that, he's from Germany. So that's why he has an accent. I've never actually spoken to Mark Petry, but he's from Germany. So he's got that European accent, ladies and gentlemen. However, it seems in that post he's going to come back, but the school has yet to actually put out a statement saying that that Mark Petry is coming back to Syracuse. We don't know for certain, but I guess signs are pointing in a more positive direction given that post. He might know something. He certainly should know something more than what we do, right? So we await to see what the school or when the school is going to release that and whether or not those guys are going to be back. We've heard nothing about Jakob Bradford, but that's the priority for Syracuse right now. Figuring out whether or not those guys want to use the extra year of eligibility, and if they decide to use the extra year of eligibility, do they want to return to Syracuse? Does Syracuse want them to come back? Would it be just a mutual parting of the ways? We're not sure, but the number one thing they got to figure out is what's up with Jakob Bradford and Mark Petry, okay? That is the cliffhanger right now of this Syracuse offensive line. Are those guys coming back or are those guys not coming back? All right. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. We are going over the Orange's offensive line in 2025. They missed out on Rahtrel Perry. We just talked about where the offensive line unit sits right now. And coming up, I believe that the Orange will add on at least one more offensive lineman in the portal. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the new year, WayFair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I don't know about you all, but I have this feeling that Syracuse football is going to add at least one more offensive lineman in the transfer portal. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. But let me explain to you why I believe this. All right. And it starts from this very principle. When Syracuse football landed Naquill Betrand in the transfer portal, right? That was nice. There was many podcasts about him, the Alabama offensive tackle, great and all. When they got him, it wasn't like Syracuse just stopped with the offensive line in terms of targeting players. They had a visit scheduled for Miles McVay, another Alabama offensive tackle. He didn't end up going on the visit. He decided to commit to North Carolina early, but there was a visit in place for him to come. And obviously with Rahtrel Perry, that offer was still out there from Syracuse. If he wanted to come to Syracuse, I don't think Syracuse was going to say no to him. It comes from that. That's why I believe that Syracuse football will add to its offensive line. Now, I will listen to this argument, and that is, well, look, maybe they just really liked those players. Maybe they really liked Miles McVay from Bama. Maybe they really liked Rahtrel Perry from Central Connecticut. And so Syracuse football was only targeting those offensive linemen because they really wanted them specifically, less so that they wanted offensive line help in the portal. But I'm choosing to believe it's more of the fact that they are looking for offensive line. It's not that they're just going to add, but I do think there will be more players that they do like on the offensive line, whether it's now or when the spring portal window opens up in mid-April. I want to say it's April 16th to the 25th when guys can re-enter the transfer portal if they so choose. All right. And by the way, it should be noted that I still believe this, even if Jakob, Bradford, and Mark Petry, the starting guards from last year, even if both those guys come back, I still think Syracuse football will add to its offensive line. But at that point, it would come down to it might just be a depth guy instead of someone who can legitimately start games in a week in and week out basis for this program. All right. The other reason why I believe that Syracuse football is going to add to this offensive line is because there are just a lot of ifs with the unit right now. There's a lot of ifs. I think that David Woolaba is going to start at tackle. I think that Naquill Betrand will be the other tackle. It's possible that Demetrius Witherspoon slides from tackle to guard, or maybe Betrand does it, or maybe Woolaba does it. But the point is that there are so many ifs with the unit. I think it's fairly certain that with the center position, it is going to be a two-horse battle. We'll see if anyone else cracks it. But as of right now, my thinking is that Cody Hornsby or true freshman Khalil Stewart will be the starting center. So I believe they will stick in-house with that. But with the guard spots, they're wide open. They're wide open. So if Jakob Bradford and Mark Petry want to return to claim their starting spots once again, great. But if not, if those guys are not back, who's going to be a starting guard for the Orange next year? Josh Miller? Joe Cruz? I don't know. You tell me. Let me know in the comment section below what in-house option you like. But I don't know. I think they're going to try to add at least one more interior offensive lineman. That's my thought on that. As far as the entire offense in general, I think the offensive line is the only unit on offense where Syracuse football would look to add in the portal. Now, sure, if there is an elite talent that only wants to play for Syracuse, you don't say no to the elite talent. But assuming that is not the case, because that's never really the case for any school. Usually players are open to more than just one program, right? I think they're done with pretty much every other unit on offense. We can talk about quarterback quickly here. They were trying to get Kyle McCord to come back for one more year. They had the backup plan in place with getting Ricky Collins, the high upside quarterback from LSU. We'll see whether or not he can live up to his billing as once a four-star recruit in 2023. But at minimum, it seems like what they're doing is they're going to have a quarterback competition between Ricky Collins, who they brought in the portal, but also Jakari Williams, Luke Carney, Rich Bellin. So I don't think they're going to add a quarterback in the transfer portal anymore, at least one that can start games. I just don't see that happening. I have seen online people talk about Colorado and Deion Sanders and Caden Salter potentially. Caden Salter was someone that Syracuse was really looking at in the portal. He did visit campus, but he's not going to commit when Kyle McCord had a possibility of returning, right? Look, if Deion Sanders goes to the NFL, great. And there's been talks about that potentially happening. Maybe they do pursue Caden Salter if he decides to re-enter the portal in that scenario. But until Deion Sanders leaves Colorado, that is not a possibility. So I'm not, barring that, I don't think Syracuse football is adding another starting quarterback in the transfer portal. Running back, probably not. They're probably not adding there either. I think they like Yassine Willis, who played a decent amount as a true freshman for the Orange this past year. And I do believe that they like Will Nixon as well as a receiving back. The reason why I say probably not adding a running back in the portal is because Will Nixon has that plantar fasciitis injury, which is a fancy way of saying broken foot. So if his recovery is behind schedule at any point, and they can maybe add on another depth running back, someone who can catch passes out of the backfield like a Will Nixon, they might decide to do that. That's possible. But assuming that Will Nixon is going to be healthy, they're probably not adding another running back in the portal. Wide receiver, there's no need to touch the unit. They've already added 2 depth guys. They got the guy from South Carolina, Tyshawn Russell. They got Chris Long from Rutgers. They have plenty of players who are ready to step in and fill the void of a guy like Jackson Meeks. So I think they're good at receiver. And with tight end, they have not been connected to a single tight end in the transfer portal. Not one. And the reason why is because, they're losing Arondé Gadsden. It's a tough loss, right? But they have 4-star tight end from 2024, Jamie Tremble, waiting in the wings, waiting for his opportunity. And I think we're all ready to give him a shot, right? He has a profile very similar to Arondé Gadsden. Not saying he's going to be as good as Arondé Gadsden, but he's got that profile. And they also have Dan Villari as the backup tight end. So when you look at the offense, the only unit where I could really see them adding is the offensive line. That's about it. And I think they will. Leave a comment in the comment section below your thoughts on the offensive line and the entire offense in general. And if you think that Syracuse is going to add another offensive lineman, and is Syracuse football going to add anyone else in the transfer portal on offense? Defense, different story. That's for another podcast for another day, all right? But for the offense, it's just the offensive line. So we're going to put a bow on this conversation talking about the offensive line, and we're going to shift gears in the next topic, which is that Fran Brown received not 1, but 2 awards today. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Fran Brown was named the best new head coach in the country in 2024 college football. That's right. Fran Brown received not 1, but 2 awards today. Let's go over the first one, then we'll talk about the second one, and then we'll go over some of his big achievements and also the fact that he is the best first-year head coach in Syracuse football history. It is not hyperbole. The wins and losses back it up, and also just the effect that he had on the program in 1 year. Stay tuned for that as well. So earlier today, Fran Brown received the Bear Bryant Top Newcomer Coach of the Year. This award goes to the best head coach that had never had prior head coaching experience at the FBS level. Hence, Fran Brown. Fran Brown came from Syracuse. He came from Georgia as a defensive backs coach. I believe he had been a defensive coordinator, or at least a co-defensive coordinator before, but he had never been a head coach at the Division I FBS level until this year. And let's be honest, that award is well-deserved for Fran Brown. It just his first season goes 10-3. And then, as I was recording this podcast, I had literally just hit the record button, and I saw a notification that Fran Brown also received another award, and that is the Steve Spurrier First-Year Head Coach Award. So congratulations to Fran Brown on both the awards. It is well-deserved. Now, we all know that Fran Brown is really striving for two things. One, an undefeated season, and two, a national championship. But hey, individual hardware, hey, that can't hurt, right? That's pretty nice for Fran Brown. So congratulations. Now, the day after the Miami game, I declared that Fran Brown had the best first-year head coach season in Syracuse football history. And I stand by that this evening, all right? I stand by that take. Here are the wins and loss. Here's the win-loss record for every first-year Syracuse football head coach since 1949, when Ben Schwartzwalder took over at the program. For those that don't know, Ben Schwartzwalder is the best head coach in Syracuse football history and was the head coach of Syracuse football's only national championship team in 1959. All right? So Ben Schwartzwalder took over in 1949 in his first season. Syracuse went 4-5. All right? It was different times back then. They played less games. In 1974, you had Frank Maloney, who went 2-9 in his first season. In 1981, Dick McPherson takes over. He goes 4-6-1. In 1991, Paul Pasqualoni takes over for Dick McPherson. He goes 10-2. So that's really the only competition for Fran Brown and best first-year head coach in Syracuse history. It's Paul Pasqualoni in 1991. In 2005, Lord Voldemort takes over as Syracuse football head coach, and he basically went Avada Kedavra on the program. They go 1-10 in his first year. He is the coach that shall not be named anymore. So Lord Voldemort in 2005 took over, goes 1-10, and basically kills the program. In 2009, you got Doug Marrone taking over for Lord Voldemort. Obviously a tough job to do. And he goes 4-8 and actually has a pretty successful tenure with Syracuse, kind of getting him back to a somewhat respectable level in college football. In 2013, Scott Schaefer takes over for Doug Marrone, and he goes 7-6. But remember, he inherited mostly a Doug Marrone team, and then it wasn't that long until Scott Schaefer really showed his true colors and wasn't exactly the greatest head coach in the world, right? In 2016, Dino Babers goes 4-8 in his first season as head coach. And then you got 2024, Fran Brown going 10-3. Only Paul Pasqualoni had a better record than Fran Brown in his first season as a head coach. But Paul Pasqualoni, first of all, was only by half a game, 10-2 versus 10-3. And second of all, he inherited a much better situation than Fran Brown. Significantly better. Fran Brown had to revamp the entire recruiting. He had the luxury of the transfer portal, but still, he had to completely revamp the program. And Fran Brown did exactly that, whereas Paul Pasqualoni, he was just continuing, I'm not trying to disrespect him here, but he was continuing the success from what Syracuse had in the prior years. And credit to him, he did exactly that. They still were very good under Paul Pasqualoni, but it's different. Fran Brown had to completely revamp the program, right? That's what I'm trying to say with that. It's not meant to be disrespect at Paul Pasqualoni by any means necessary. Not taking a shot at him, all right? Don't come at me, all right? As far as the recruiting and the portal achievements, he took Syracuse from a bottom-of-the-barrel recruiting team in the ACC. They were either worst or second worst in the conference in recruiting year in and year out under Dino Babers. Fran Brown changes it in one recruiting class in 2024. They were already upper half and they were once again upper half in 2025, and I imagine they're going to be upper half in the conference again in 2026. He also struck gold in the transfer portal, all right, getting Kyle McCord, getting Fadil Diggs, but also hitting on guys like Devin Grant and getting Deuce Chestnut back. And Jackson Meeks was a big-time portal addition, under-the-radar guy that they got. The only reason why we were really freaking out about him is because he attended Georgia. But he was a 3-star recruit at Georgia. He barely saw the field at Georgia. He comes to Syracuse, and all of a sudden, he's a second-team All-ACC player. It was remarkable. It's like if Chris Long, or not Chris Long, it's like if Chris Long, who they got in the portal this year, had an all-conference caliber season next year. And he's a depth receiver at this point, right? So they hit in the transfer portal, no doubt. The key is now with Fran Brown, here's the key. Can he build on it? Great first year. We're all impressed. What's the encore? What do you got in year 2? 2025 is a tougher schedule. You don't have that experienced quarterback like Kyle McCord back there. It's certainly going to be interesting, but I believe in Fran Brown. I believe that he has the program headed in the right direction. That's why I said that after the Miami game as well, I think it was a program-changing caliber win because Fran Brown and Syracuse football had re-arrived in college football. All right, so congratulations to Fran Brown on not 1, but 2 awards this afternoon. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, tomorrow, Syracuse football 2026 recruiting update. It's going to be a full podcast, and because we got a lot of recruiting news from 2026 recently, they got their 7th commit in the class, so we'll talk about him. They also cracked the top 7 for a 2026 4-star defensive back. So we'll go over that on the podcast as well. On Friday, you got Poll Friday. How many Syracuse football players will be drafted in the 2025 NFL draft? If you have not voted, do not worry. The voting is still open. You can go on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse. You're going to have to scroll down a little bit, but you will eventually find the question. And if you don't want to scroll down that many times, I don't blame you. It's okay. You can go to YouTube, search up Locked On Syracuse, go to the community section. You won't have to scroll down that much, and you will find the question posted right there where you can cast your vote as to how many Syracuse football players you think will be drafted. And then on Saturday, Syracuse basketball is hosting Notre Dame at 4 p.m. Eastern. There will be a full post-game reaction podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. And I will see you guys all again really soon.